Radio City and Midday present the Hitlist OTT Awards.
Hello and welcome to OTT Bosses Huddle, our annual event that leads up to the Midday and Radio City's Hitlist OTT Awards. With me are, of course, the bosses of the OTT industry, whether from the content creation side or from the web platform side. I just quickly introduce you to Nair, CEO, Applause Entertainment, Arunabh Kumar, founder, TVF, Madhu Bhojwani, partner, Emmay Entertainment, Nimisha Pandey, Chief Content Officer, Hindi Originals Z5, Aparna, Head, India Originals, Amazon Prime Video, Pratiksha, Director of Films and Licensing, Netflix India, and of course, Apoorva Mehta, CEO, Dharma Productions. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
I'm wearing a shirt for all of you, not even wearing shorts, it's actually trousers. So I'm like all completely gung-ho about this particular thing, which is obviously going to be a conversation on OTTs as an industry, how it's kind of different from television and films per se. We'll briefly look into censorship, this newly acquired censorship or self-censorship, as it were, because how can we not? I'm also aware there are a lot of young people, or maybe not even young, the older people who are aspirants into this particular field, follow discussions of this nature. So I'm going to also ask you about how one enters a field of this nature, how accessible you are to newer people and newer ideas. Eventually, of course, we're discussing trends of 2021 in the OTT industry, but we'll also look at the emerging opportunities and the challenges ahead. In the end, I'm going to ask you guys to name your favorite piece of content from 2021. It could be from Indian, international, foreign, in terms of non-English. It could be regional. I'm just letting you know right away because you have enough time to think about it. Feel free to butt in, guys, at any point in time. I'll actively encourage you, in fact, कि अपने दिल के भड़ास निकाल लें अपने बाहर. This is a good time to do it. Initially, of course, I'm going to ask you a question each. And then, the house is open to everyone. I'm going to start with you, Nair. Samir, you are the granddaddy already of this field, I must say.
You're talking about young people industry calling me granddaddy.
Young people are the viewers and young people are the creators. You're the granddaddy looking into the whole sphere. And it has to be said that when you started out 3 or 4 years ago, because that's really how nascent the industry is to begin with. I mean, you were making stuff for platforms. You are a independently funded content studio, if I'm not mistaken. Then thereafter, you give it to the platforms for them to acquire. Now, in that time, Samir, we've gone through a major explosion, of course. I mean, there are 75 streaming services. If I'm not mistaken, 225 shows were made in 2021 alone. 225 of which 175 were in Hindi. So that's a massive one, right? In this time, have you seen segmentation take place in the industry, Samir, in terms of when you make a show, you think, okay, this will be something I'm going to pitch to Aparna, or something I might show to Netflix, or something I might go to Nimisha with. Is there some segmentation that has taken place?
I think the segmentation that is happening is more, it's driven by platforms as time passes. It used to be in TV, that in the old days, we used to say that this is a very Star Plus kind of show and this is a very ZTV kind of show. So I think platforms, over time, get a certain identity. They get known for some things work for some people, and then they tend to do more of that. And, and then there's a little differentiation of budget. There's a differentiation of quality, the kind of ambition that people have. And I think all of those finally lend to creating character and personality for brands. And I think, yes, in the last 5 years, that has been, when originally it was always that Netflix was the gold standard globally. And, they were the absolute holy grail that everyone was going for. And Amazon was this real, the one to look out for. And there were, of course, all the Indian platforms that were there, all the broadcasters who were turned into platforms. There were a few independents. But over the last 5 years, I think, that distinction is gradually, and of course, everyone has got deep pockets, everyone has got ambition. They look at each other. We look at all of them and, try to see as to who's looking to do what. But yes, I think that character is sort of emerging as to, and I think even in audiences' perception, people, sort of expect different things from different platforms.
So would the first categorization, Samir, be between subscriber-based platforms and free to air or free to access platforms like, say, an MX player would be a completely different ball game from, say, a Netflix or an Amazon Prime Video or Z5 for that matter? Would that be the first thing?
It does happen, because finally, somebody's got to pay the bill. So if it's advertising supported, then it's free for the consumer.
So give me an example from stuff that you produced where you looked at something and said, okay, this is purely MX player and this is so Z5 and this is completely going to Netflix or Amazon.
We don't do that at all, actually. We make stuff, whatever we do, we make for audiences, and then we show it around, and then it either calls out to someone or it doesn't. But that being said, like there are some, like typically MX player, for example, is driven by it's a very male skewed audience. It's a very heartland audience. It goes much more massy. They love crime. They love, those kind of things, and the more hardcore crime. So I think something like a Mirzapur, for example, would do outrageously well on MX player. It would like go and get 300 million viewers or some such thing.
I'm pretty sure it got 300 million viewers in Amazon Prime Video too.
Well, it's one of our most watched show. It's done incredibly well on our service, both season 1 and season 2, and incredibly proud of that show.
I think I would want to add there is that also increasingly no platform wants to be identified with one kind of content, right? And that kind of giving rise to not only the diversity, I mean, the volume, of course, I mean, is gonna go up because the viewers constantly want fresh pieces of content, but also the diversity of it, right? You're no more happy with the niche that you thought that you've created for yourself. You want a pie in like every cake in that sense, right?
Coming to you, Arunabh, I mean, you guys at TV have started out as a YouTube collective. And then, of course, this entire explosion of OTT platforms, the subscriber-based OTT platforms happen. Now, when you do a show and you continue to do stuff on YouTube, I love Aspirants, that in 2021. And then you do a show like Kota Factory 2 that drops on Netflix, or for that matter, Panchayat that drops on Amazon Prime Video. How different is it for you personally as a creator? Technically speaking, global reach, but global reach is true for YouTube as well. What changes?
Like Samisha said that ultimately it's you're making a good story and you're hoping to reach out to people and people watch it. And I think thanks to the last half a decade, all the platforms are massive now. So I think only the thing is in terms of business, it helps. We make certain kind of shows for our YouTube channels, like Aspirants for a brand. It just gives us a little bit of a window to keep the kitchen running on branded content, which was the genesis of TVF. I mean, we started as a small production house for branded content, making AVs for Colgate. So that's how we started. So, YouTube just helps us reach out to a little bit of a newer audience. Like people who are watching YouTube today are very different from people who are watching YouTube 4 years back. Really? Like what's the difference? People who watch Rowdies in 2012, they are all paid subscribers of all the amazing platforms. They are no longer coming on YouTube. So I think, and then you have the newer 18-year-old, 17-year-old people who are now watching. So I think, that cascade effect happens as so we have aged with our viewers, but we have a younger generation that comes into TVF, wants to do sketches. Short form is something actually why we do YouTube channels, because short form content, we are I think the only guys who do short form. And our board asks, why do you do it? It's a loss-making thing, but yeah, we try and make these videos. And Aspirants was actually an outcome of a small sketch that we made on UPSC, and then it ended up becoming a show. Yeah, and Kota, like you said, Kota started on YouTube, but we have discovered huge amount of people who have discovered Kota Factory 1 because of Netflix.
And the sense I get is, of course, the economics behind the making of the show. And when you're doing it as a YouTube collective, as against when you are a content creator for an Amazon or a Netflix, is going to be a completely different ballgame. Madhu, I'm going to come to you because I want to understand the economics of all of this from you, from someone who has done films hugely, who's been part of Bollywood, also now does television shows or series, as it were, or web series, as they call them, for OTT platforms. Is it true that it's actually no different in the sense that the kind of money you would make from making films in terms of the production of it, not so much the return, obviously, is roughly the same as you would if you were making stuff for platforms?
Mayank, that's not entirely true, because traditionally as a company, we started out, of course, making films and films for the theatrical experience. And then in 2017, we, dipped our toes into the water when we produced a show called POW, Bandi Yudh Ke, for Star. It was a limited series daily, and that gave us a sense that, okay, this is also something that can work. You can aspire to have that kind of quality on the small screen, and we believe that was going to be the way that the consumer is going to actually be watching content. So we bet on digital at a very early stage. Specific to your question, when you look at films, of course, there is the whole question of the ownership of the IP, right? Which is what one retains as a creator. And then, of course, depending on the model and monetization, you dilute IP and then you play for the upside. So even though you may front load a sort of a small margin for yourself, you really play for the upside depending on how the film performs at the box office. In as far as shows are concerned, and these are largely commissioned. And so in a commission scenario, really there's a cap on how much you can make, and exactly what you're going to make. So it really depends, because with a film you could actually land up losing money if you don't get the economics right, and you could make money on a show. But of course it's capped, it's predictable, there's no variability in it. So I'd say that it's really project specific. I wouldn't say that there's a thumb rule as such. But if you're somebody who likes to go to the races, then of course it's the films for you. As versus predictability, which is if you're not a hunter and you're a farmer, then it's OTT for you. So really, that's how the economics works.
If I take your farmers' input cost model, and the input cost being roughly the same, whether you're making a film for theatrical release or if you're making a film for a platform or for an OTT platform, right? In a global sense, are we still competitive? Like, you would make a show like an Empire, which in my head was a bit of a Game of Thrones, Indian version. मान के चलते हैं, like genre wise, if you want.
But budget तो नहीं मिला. Budget
exactly. So that's what I'm getting at. Would you get GOT budgets?
No, absolutely not, right? But you're compared to the output quality, narrative, and every other tenet that there is to offer on a global scale, and perhaps 100 times the budget. You're still compared to that, right? Because I mean, today the content is borderless, right? It's on every platform, and you're consumed across 200 countries, depending on which platform you're streaming on. So no, really, I mean, there is definitely a difference in the input cost, but your margins are also driven on the basis of input costs, right? So it really is variable. But again, like I said, for us, over the past 2 years, if I were to say, we've had for our part about 10 titles released during the pandemic, and the economics have been varying, because we've gone direct to OTT with some of our films. So of course, there's been an opportunity which we've capitalized on over there. We've had some shows where our budgets were capped, but our costs went up because of the pandemic. So it's been a mixed bag, really, Mayank. So there's no real thumb rule. But I'd say that, really the hunting and farming analogy, I think would hold really, really well when you compare films to shows.
Nimisha, I think the analogy also works for your platform, because, when we were working on the awards and looking at all the stuff that got created in 2021, we were pretty flummoxed and of course pleasantly surprised by how much ZEE5 has created. It's a pretty massive list. You've really done a massive harvest in 21. Firstly, tell me how many shows and or actually pieces of content did you create in 21?
So there were close to 40 pieces of content.
Do you have like an annual mandate of how many things that you will need to come out with in a particular year? And then you have a budget, and then you play with that, with the number of things that you will do given the budget and the numbers?
Usually it works the other way around, that you have the budget and then you work out the strategy of number of pieces and how do you want to release them, right? But going forward, we are focusing more on the quality in that sense. So you may not see that many number of pieces coming out, but hoping for more impactful pieces to come out.
Fair enough. And that's an advantage that you have, Aparna. I remember we had a conversation about how Amazon Prime Video works. Is actually your mandate is not to create too much, that you technically can make do with one series in an entire month, and that becomes an impactful series. Does that make your life personally as a content head a little easier, because it gives you a lot more time in terms of research and development? You can spend more time in creating. You don't have to deliver every week or every 10 days.
At Amazon Prime Video, our endeavor is to tell stories that connect, inspire, provoke, and entertain, not just in India, but hopefully, will have a resonance across the world. And every decision begins with our customers, their needs, their tastes, their preferences, so really telling stories that can ignite passion and help create a sense of community. When we talk about Mirzapur, it's become a part of the cultural zeitgeist. Patal Lok, it's become a part of, every water cooler sort of discussion. And the mission is to create something for everybody across genres, demographics, geographies, languages. It may not come out so clearly, but during the lockdown, we had actually put out 18 shows. We had very quickly doubled down on our direct to service strategy, and we put out about 50 films across 6 languages. And, so almost 70 new titles were there on our service. But does it ease the pressure for me because we're not in this sort of quantity game? Yes and no. There is no sort of pressure to put out one show, every week. But the pressure to put out something that can constantly raise the bar, that can constantly become, sort of a new benchmark. And that pressure is not easy. And, some of the people that we've collaborated with are here on the panel, and they will sort of corroborate, that fact.
Coming to you, Pratiksha Rao from Netflix India, when you have Aparna right next to you, of course, she has the added pressure of making an impact with everything she puts out. And then you have, say, a Hotstar, which has live streaming spots, which is impossible to compete with. When you're in an ecosystem of that nature, how difficult is it to be Netflix in India in a market like this? Because they're also playing completely different games. I mean, all said and done, the fact is that for Amazon Prime Video, it is an added service to a shopping portal, right? While we love everything that Amazon Prime Video puts out, that is not their core business. Television or even network television seems to be Hotstar's core business, even now to a huge extent. But you guys are just pure OTT platform. How difficult is it to compete with them? And also from a perspective of licensing of films, Pratiksha, I mean, is there much greater competition? Because when you're trying to get something that everybody wants, is the auction, the price is much higher.
I think we can all agree that competition is always good. It always pushes us to do more. It also creates more opportunities, right? Because it expands the creative community. So I think it's good for us, it's good for our members, it's good for the audience, because there's a lot more great content being created. We are primarily an entertainment-focused company. That's our app is, our service is our primary business. Our focus is just on entertaining our members on our platform. And in India specifically, our focus is on bringing as much diverse stories as we can, so that our members can find the kind of stories that they enjoy. They can find stories from their favorite filmmakers, from their favorite creators on our service. And being a global service, right, we don't have this, because you've been asking question about the pressure of volume, the pressure of quantity. Of course, we all want to make great content. So that pressure is there on all of us, not just on the streaming platforms, on our partners as well. Everybody wants to put out something that's going to be impactful. But I think our members also enjoy our global content to a great degree, right? So we've seen, a lot of our global shows, the massive hits in India, which perhaps would have been unimaginable maybe a couple of years back, irrespective of which language they're in, whether it's English, Spanish, Korean, irrespective of all of that. So our focus is on entertaining our members, We want to do the best job with it. And, the one thing that Netflix has always kind of strongly and truly believed in is focusing. So we believe in focusing what we, who we are and what we want to do. And as long as we continue that focus, we know we'll succeed.
Platforms like Netflix or Amazon or a Z5 are actually the new star system, in the sense that back in the day, the star would greenlight a particular script. That's why it would come to light in the first place. And then if the film was loved by people, then the star became huger as a result. If it was hated, then they actually hated the star, not so much the movie. Said, ye pit gaya. Ye iski career khatam ho gaya, as if he did everything so far as that particular movie was concerned, right? And that's really what's happening with platforms too. I mean, Reed Hastings and his truth bomb about how, India and Indian market and what they need to do. And, everyone in the world now has an opinion on what the strategy Netflix should apply. Like, everyone is an expert on what is it that they're doing wrong. Do you get too many of those? Like, anybody you meet at a party that tell you what Netflix should be doing with themselves and where they got it wrong and where they get right?
I think everybody has, and you would have heard a lot of our leaders always talk about this. Every year they'll meet people who want to pitch them an idea. And I think of it as actually a great honor, right? That people think so passionately about our brand, they think so passionately about our service, that they want to see their favorite stories. They want to see, the stories that they gravitate towards on our service. So it's an honor in a way, but we think of ourselves as the creative enablers, right? We're fans of entertainment, just like our members. So our focus is on trying to find the best stories, enabling our partners to do that, to do it in the best way possible, and to make them travel globally.
Right, because I am talking about the new star system. How can we not talk about the old star system? And this is why I would like to bring Apoorva into the conversation. I mean, you guys are the star system, you are Bollywood. You work with a certain ecosystem that's existed over decades, as it were. You benefited hugely from it, and you sort of toppers in that industry in your own right. And then when you enter an OTT platform world, which is completely different, both from from creation, also from distribution point of view, and of course from consumption point of view, how difficult, how easy has it been to navigate this new world? What have you learned? What have you unlearned in the process of actually being part of this industry now?
Oh, I think the mediums are very, very different in that sense. They of course reach out to the same consumer base, but I think the way content is created and curated for films is definitely different from the way it's created and curated for a platform, because a platform obviously is inward looking. It's looking for their own consumers and what works with their consumers based on their analytics. So in that sense, there is a huge difference. I think the great learning for us has been the amount of you worked on films and you kind of realize that you are a little bit myopic in some sense, because your creativity is yours and you go out with it. This is what I believe in, and this works great. If it doesn't work, shit, we are in trouble. But with working on a show, you understand the difficulty in because the format itself is longer. You're working for 7 episodes as opposed to a film. You're in 1.5 hours, bang, 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 5 songs, intermission. You peak here, you bottom here, you peak again at the climax, and you're over and out. On a show, the challenge of keeping the consumer engaged, because the character has to be engaging continuously and making sure that the arc does not drop at any point in the episodes. I think all of that was tremendously new learning, and I think we're really happy that we had an opportunity of working with Netflix and with Amazon now. Because these guys are great. I mean, I'm hoping to work with C5 soon, Nimisha. Yeah, fingers crossed soon. So there's been a tremendous amount of learning, because it is very different, and it is extremely tough, because you are competing with the world. On these platforms, there are no barriers to entry. I almost enjoy the tag of being a bit exclusive for movies, because that not everybody can make a movie quickly, because there is a difficulty in getting scripts approved, reaching actors. But in this platform, the amazing thing of this platform is that it's just broken all those barriers. Anybody who has a good story to tell has access to somebody, and it's not so dependent on stars, because the character takes dominance over the star system. So I think that is the great bit about these platforms. And there are so many stories that you can't tell in films, purely because the expense on releasing the film won't support the returns, because the subject matter is niche, or it is too urban, all these stories or stories which you feel you can't be told in 1 hour, but they're great stories to tell, and you have all of this ability on these platforms. So I think in that sense, it's been a huge learning for us, but it's been very, very amazing.
Like when you take away the star system from the entertainment industry per se, and one, I would like to know from all of you whether that has happened already. Now, let's say, Aparna, if there's a Patal Lok on an Amazon Prime Video and a Coolie #1 playing also on the same platform, one has Varun Dhawan, the other person, Jaideep Ahlawat, may not be as well known, certainly not as well known as Varun Dhawan, purely because there's a lot of investment that's gone into turning him into the star, as it were, in terms of even marketing budgets and things like that, of films that he's done in the past. Would the click be roughly the same? So it doesn't matter who's in it. Would that be a correct thing to say, or actually we just deluding ourselves?
I'd just say that, this medium is very democratic and it's very liberating. And there is something for everyone, and there is no rush. Like, we don't have to prove a success within one weekend. It allows for a piece of content to breathe, people to really invest in it, immerse themselves in it. Most beautiful thing is that, as enablers of the creative community, we are putting our might behind a Jaideep Ahlawat playing Hathiram Chaudhary and a Varun Dhawan. For us, it's no different.
I get that, Aparna, but I'm saying because you want the content to breathe, right? So let's say you put out Breathe with Abhishek Bachchan in it, who's no doubt a movie star of 20 years vintage, which is very hard to beat in terms of public imagination. And then you put out a Patal Lok purely in terms of the number of hits you're likely to get. Is that going to be affected at all, or a little bit?
Each content takes a little while, some longer than the others. If the content connects with the consumers, then, it's a matter of time. Like I said, when we put out Patal Lok, people were wondering, what this show is about. But eventually, before we know, Patal Lok it really surprised us. Of course, we as creators believed in the show, but the way it was received by the creative community, by the audiences, not just in India, but across the world, it truly surprised us. And look at what it gave, to the creative community. It gave Jaideep Ahlawat, it gave an Ishwaq Singh, it gave so many new writers, 2 new phenomenal directors. So, this click business, that doesn't matter.
No, but I mean, I'm presuming it should matter because you would be serving the consumer, right?
In the short run, it doesn't matter. In the short run. And that is why we have 2 funnels for our content. We have the films that we can license, and we have the shows that we can produce. And both of them, do this most beautiful thing of serving our customers and their needs and tastes and preferences.
Right. So I'm going to take this question again to both Pratiksha and Nimisha, in terms of when you're budgeting a show, and I'm just taking it from the world that Apoorva comes from. When he's budgeting a film, good likelihood is that 50% of the budget could simply go on the movie star, right? I mean, that's been the model for the longest. When you are doing the same, would you put that kind of a number on who is starring that show? Because you'll just leave it to that show or that film, because people are on your platform anyway, and they might click and figure out whether they like to watch it. They don't need to go to a theater. Does that change things?
I mean, I think, just to put it very simply, the click factor would matter. I mean, I would say the number of clicks in the beginning, like a star would get over somebody who's not known, would definitely be more. But the important part here is that for OTT, the way you evaluate content is no more clicks, right? So sure, even if the clicks may have been more, but essentially what is important is how much did you really stick through the story? Did you end up watching the show? You could have just clicked and switched off in 2 minutes, and that at the end of the day can be a vanity metric, but it isn't much good, right? So sure, I mean, for sampling maybe, but for actually the content to do well in the real honest sense, it doesn't matter if it's a star or anyone else. I mean, it's actually just a character, a good actor, and the story that has done the part.
would you care more for the script that's sent to you, or the people behind the making of that particular script, or would you still chase after the few people who are really, really popular and are likely to get you the hits on day one?
Irrespective of everything else, the script is the most important thing, and the creator's vision. So those are the two most important things in us assessing a project. I'm not going to deny the power of big talent. They have their own big fan base, and hence there is a certain commercial value also attached to it, and they spend a lot of years building that fan base, building that filmography. So there's certainly certain value to that, but that's not the most important thing for the success of a film or for a series. And of course, on OTT, the way, like Nimisha was describing, the way a lot of performance is evaluated is a little bit different, right? Because when you walk into a theater, 99% of the times you're going to stick till the end of the movie. Maybe not you so much, Mayank, because sometimes you can be a harsh judge of certain things, so you may choose to walk out.
No, I will watch till the end for sure. Don't worry about that. I love crappy movies too.
Most folks would stick around, right? So you get that money that you've spent, it's there. But for us, and at least for Netflix, we want to also look at how long people want to actually watch the film, and then how much they want to talk about it to their friends, to their family, and then bring in more audience to it. But the other aspect, I think, of bringing stars, bringing big talent, they of course come with their own fan base, and they bring something to the project, needless to say. But it also comes with a higher, pressure for that project to deliver really, really, big value for the platform. So I think you have to also find the right way to use that big talent, right? It's not required for everything, but you may want to, especially in the US, we've been doing a lot of big talent films, which have done extremely well. So it's shown that, you can achieve big success on OTT with big stars, irrespective of the commercials that come with it. But you can also achieve big success. We launched a film called Minnal Murli, and I remember, Mayank, when I mentioned it to you, you weren't really familiar with it, but now the kind of fandom it generated, we had also not anticipated, neither had the creators. And it didn't have a big star, but now, of course, the actor has become a bit of a national heartthrob, and so has the director. So that's the power of the OTT success there.
Right. Even I want to bring you in here, Samir, someone who spent many years in the television industry and now part of the OTT industry, also making films. How do you see these three being different? I mean, we deal with this whole star system when it comes to the theatrical model of movies, the traditional ones. With television, there was just like a lot of churning, like, daily television, and they became stars. Those characters became huge. Where does OTT lie between these two particular old industries, comparatively speaking, given it's hardly 5 years old, this one?
Well, there are different ways to describe it, but one that I have often found that helps explain it best is that if you take the movie business as playing for the national cricket team, that's like, 11 people get into the team out of a country of 1 billion. So everyone aspires to be that big movie star. And then if you take TV, especially the fiction on TV, as being domestic cricket, where everyone has to come through the ranks and play domestic cricket before you can possibly make it into the national.
Like domestic, you mean like Ranji Trophy level, or?
Well, that's the only domestic that we have. Unfortunately. But otherwise, in other countries, there's a lot of a very powerful domestic circuit. Then the OTT business is really like the IPL, right? It happens once in a way. It involves, international players and domestic players. There's a really high quality of cricket on display. You get to strut your stuff. You can come and create a big bang. You get your moment in the sun. You get to play with big people, and you can you get to strut your stuff on stage, do all of that stuff. So like Scam, for example, was one of those moments. Patal Lok is a moment like that. These are things that happen. They are not the big stars. They are not necessarily your classic movie or your like a television moment, but it's broken new ground, broken out, done great things. So I think that's where it is. And a lot of the streaming business is also now become, unlike TV, which is very linear, which is very geographic and language bound. Like in the old days, you had a Hindi channel or a Malayalam channel or a Bengali channel. Today, you have one platform that has everything. You have international and domestic stuff on the same platform next to each other. You've got movies and series. So, I mean, a platform is like, it's like a kid in a candy store. It's like insanity. So, I mean, that then opens up so much opportunities for all kinds of content to coexist and to shine and break through. And audiences, as they're saying that, everything depends on completion rate, not so much on the first sampling click. So I think audiences can be, just switch off and move on, or they can be really kind and they can sort of, hang with you and stay with you. So,
I mean, that's the perception that a lot of, people seem to ascribe to, is how at one level, internet itself has changed the audiences in a way that we would not have imagined before, like a Minal Murali being trending across India. And that's a Malayalam film. And it's a Malayalam superhero film that clearly people across India have watched, have sampled, have loved. We saw that, and that was the big story of 2021, was the massive success of Pushpa, Alu Arjun, which a lot of people did not know, they hadn't sampled his work before, so we thought. But clearly, that's a movie that would on its own would have crossed about 150 crore if the world was normal. It did about 80 crore business in theatrical, in Hindi market alone. Apoorva and Madhu, I'm going to take this to you. How do you think that's going to, just change the scenario in Bollywood itself? I mean, there are people who've been watching films which are not in Hindi and loving it more than the ones that are in Hindi. One, how do you tackle it? Second, were you surprised by it?
Honestly, I think that Pushpa's performance, I mean, it's a different animal, right? I mean, Alu Arjun's fan base being what it is, I think we've already known that on satellite, that there's a strong appeal for consumption of dubbed content. But the fact that it did what it did in theatrical was to me a surprise. Of course, I expected it to do well, but the kind of numbers it delivered, I think it surprised everybody on the upside. And I think it's interesting because everybody's wondering whether we have to write the epitaph for theatrical. Is this the demise of theatrical as a medium? And while the jury is still out there, I think it's been delivered a severe blow. There's no doubt about it. How quickly it comes back and in what form it comes back is we still don't know. But I think that it will continue to be there as a medium, because in India, watching movies on the big screen is not just about the experience of cinema, but it's also an outing. It's entertainment, right? You get out there and entertain yourself. So where regional films are concerned, I think that the appetite for consumption was always there. But going to the theaters to watch any film, whether it's a regional film or an English film or a Hindi film, is all going to be about the experience, experiential films, big event films, as everybody is talking about them, will continue to draw the numbers, because the dollar or the rupee, the spend is, in the sub of 30, they control that. And you can see how that spend is moving.
Now people have done analysis on why Pushpa did the kind of business did. And I think one thing that people did not mention at all, and he's right, my colleague Krishna said that the quality of dubbing is so good that it works when you hear it in Hindi. The dialogues actually work by themselves, rather than most of the dubs that we'd seen in the past, or at least he'd seen in the past. Apoorva, I'm coming to you because this is an important one, because you represent that, the big old Bollywood, as it were, and everyone's talking about how you guys have really turned into, vendors for OTT platforms, not giving enough thought, not giving enough might, support to the theatrical business per se. Even when you made a Shershah, you put it on Amazon Prime Video. You made a Gehraiyan, you put it on Amazon Prime Video. There's an entire theatrical chain, that's looking into saying, guys, like, just be the Bollywood guys that you always were.
Theatrical business is the cornerstone of our business, and that will never change. I mean, we are committed to continue to make films for theatrical. I think that is something that will never change, because that is where our heart lies. Having said that, we are truly amazed by the reach of these platforms, and in both those films that you mentioned, it's both were put on platform for different reasons. The Shesha was something we had held on to the film for a year by that time. And, we were very clear that we wanted to make sure it releases on August 15th to kind of tie in with that whole sentiment of war and, soldiers and all of that. So I think for that was a big choice that we need to tie into that date, because we didn't want to lose that whole date for the Shesha. And for Gehraiya, I think the film itself lends this film, things aren't still stable now. Like Madhu rightly said, a lot of the films, the big tentpole films are performing in the theaters, but we still haven't seen whether these mid-range films are really going to perform or not. We've had a couple of them that are released and they haven't done well. So the kind of cinema that the audience is lapping in theaters is definitely not going to be what they were lapping before. There is definitely a skew towards the experiential, those, the larger than life films like she mentioned, and of course, the South films, which seem to be filling in a gap of this entertainment value, which I think for some reason Hindi filmmakers haven't been able to give. There is a certain kind of entertainment that they bring in, which is very unique, which very few Hindi filmmakers have managed to do. Like Rohit Shetty is one of them. There are very few people who kind of get that correct mix of scale and entertainment. So I think those films will continue to do well. We still don't know what that mid-rung is going to do. We'll have to wait and watch, how this all pans out. But having said that, I'm very hopeful that, we are a country, where films is not a casual outing. It's a social experience. It's something you do with your friends and your family. And I don't think that can ever change. It's in our DNA.
I'm also talking about, Apoorva, this change of, and I'll get to Arunabh on this aspect in particular, is the change of what is mainstream anymore, right? Mainstream could be a star from Telugu cinema being loved by people in Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, as it turned out. You've done a fairly good job of figuring that out, and actually now, instead of there being a competition between the two, you'll actually go ahead and make a movie like Liger, which has Vijay Deverakonda in the lead with an Ananya Pandey, or an RRR gets made with an Alia Bhatt or a Ajay Devgan in cameos. But then they're looking at the so-called pan-India film, as it were, coming from the South, right? Is that where we are looking? It's no more the question of those 6 or 7 movie stars from Bombay, and that's what you would concentrate on?
No, absolutely. Because you've seen it with Bahubali, you've seen it again with Pushpa. I said, I think Hindi audiences are definitely language agnostic. We are lapping up South Indian content. And I think the great thing is that OTT platforms have given us exposure to this content, which otherwise would not have been there. Of course, you have a couple of films that are revered on cinema like Bahubali and Pushpa, but there are so many others that have found so much love on the OTT platform that, it allows us to kind of cross-pollinate, which is something what Hollywood is always doing. When you will see any big Hollywood franchise, there's one Chinese, there's one Japanese, there's one Afro-American, there is 2 Latinos, and there is that whole enchilada of actors to appeal to all demographics across the world, And I think we are definitely going to do that. You have big South filmmakers doing it. We are doing it now. We are casting a lot of people from the South because you want that convergence for your content. You want greater eyeballs. So it's definitely going to happen. And the reality is, we are in an industry where there are very few stars. So it's always nice to have access to more and continue making good content with more stars.
Sticking to Liger that you're making, Apoorva, if you were to make Arjun Reddy now, would you even bother making it as Kabir Singh? Would you just release it as Arjun Reddy with Vijay in the lead, as it happened with Pushpa, and everyone loved it anyway?
Not really, I mean, you've seen, you have Jersey being made now. You have to see how the film fares out. So I think the Hindi film also, there are certain nuances that come in and which work well, So I'm not sure. I mean, it's tough to say this. I mean, it's very difficult to say this, It's very difficult to say this. I think in Pushpa's case, it's just been viewed so heavily in the Hindi cinema now, it might be tricky. But if a film has not achieved that kind of visibility, there's definitely merit to make it here. I mean, there's no question about that.
Like, sticking to the larger idea of a mainstream, Arunabh, and I have to let all of you know, I think it was in 2016, if I'm not mistaken, Arunabh had me on one of his TVF sketches. I did a cameo. I played myself in that thing. And, and this is like early stage of YouTube.
So 2014 Feb, you played yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. And, and say 4 or 5 years later, I was in Allahabad. We were doing a Jagran Film Festival there. And there were people there in the theater saying, wo TVF work. उधर से उस वीडियो में था वो. I was quite shocked, and of course that's all panned out in the way that it did thereafter. where we don't know, what people are watching. But that's what internet does. It's way too democratic. Like you could meet a young person and just hear about 10 to 15 people that they follow that for you personally, depending on what your age is, you've never even heard of them, right? Do you think that fragmentation is massive, Arunabh? The stars from your stable, the guys that you created from your collective, I mean, they're well known across, but maybe, maybe Madhu hasn't really consumed their work, but somebody at age 16, they're all massive fans. Is that where we are even now? Like the idea of there being one Shah Rukh Khan or a Salman Khan is actually broken down. It's just too fragmented now.
I'll just take pieces and then I'll try to. So I think we definitely should acknowledge one massive industry which has never gotten its due. It's the subtitling and the dubbing industry. I think this is the right forum and the right segue for that. I think Mona Ma'am and the whole sound, I mean, those guys, and also thanks to APV, Netflix, who have brought in this culture of dubbing, and it's massive. You're right. People don't need to sort of even look at the subtitles, and even those guys do a lot of fascinating transcripting. I think so. I think that industry definitely is finally, I hope, is getting its due, and it's making. In terms of big star, small star, and a mainstream bit, I'll take two examples. Fabulous. One example is Legacy, Friends Reunion. I think programmed by Nimisha and team at Z, along with a Breakpoint, which was a documentary also which came. Breakpoint had 2 stars. They have never worked in any Bollywood film. They are known as Leander Pace and Mahesh Bhupti. And I wanted to watch that documentary because I have heard of these 2 stars. And so I want to sample that. So that's the reason Nimisha I watched. I said, okay, wow, this is something interesting that Z5 has put. Now there is another show which everybody has been raving about. I have not really seen it. In fact, we work with the platform, and when I'm talking to platform guys, they say, "Arey yaar, subscription lege dekh to le," and that's what happens to be Scam, which I finished in 11 hours flat. I don't think, other than Mr. Rajat Kapoor, any known faces there in that show, right, Samir sir? I think nobody has been seen much in that show. Maybe I think Shareb along with Gemini sir, all they are there, but I think nobody knows. It's his Harshad Mehta's show, and Pratik Gandhi, you have never heard of him, you have never seen him, and you finish that show. That show ends up being 18th highest show in the IMDb rating top 250. So you literally have these examples where, if you look at the construct of this medium, I think I always like to debate only on the quantifiable aspects. Star works or not works. I am a rookie. I've never made a film, so I can't even say those things. But you have more choices. If you are bored watching 5 minutes on a show on any of the platform featuring the biggest star, that platform itself gives you small windows of option. Literally it will show you, go click this and watch this. Literally they have facilitated. And that's why I like that they themselves actually are very democratic. They do not put one star over the other. They're like saying, "Acha, ye bore ho raha hai bhai, to just watch this below." And I think that is where, if you go into a theater, and this happened to me 2-3 years back, I wanted to watch Badhai Ho, but I couldn't get a ticket because all the screens were booked for some other movie. So these are finite mediums, and internet is an infinite medium. There are so many choices. So the audiences are no longer constrained by the number of choices. You had to watch KBC at 9 p.m. every day on Star. There was nothing else. But at 9 p.m. every day, you can watch any number of things on Z5 or APV or Netflix or anything. So I think that is an aspect which has led to democratization of choices, I'll say. It also leads to a fascinating concept of option paralysis. I don't know. I think Pratiksha can help me on this. I think The Office and The Friends remains in the top 5 shows trending of Netflix throughout the year. It's never one. It never goes out of 10, but it's there in either 4, 5, 6, or 7. Because if I have so many options, I end up clicking on something that I've known the legacy of, which is The Friends. And that's where I think there is this, by law of averages, we are in a fascinating position where we can take somebody like Jaideep, who I congratulated on Road 11 years back when I saw his small clip in Gangs of Wasseypur. We had made a sketch around it. So that's why we know him very well since then. But I think it took 10 years for him to be recognized for his work in a big show. At the same time, you have Pratik Gandhi. At the same time, you have Mr. Manoj Bajpayee, who's a star and has made family man work. So yes, you can not get to the bottom of this. Is a debate, and that's why there is no conclusion to it. But by law of averages, you can make a Gullak or a Scam or a show which or a Patal Lok or certain shows. Today, you have that choices which you didn't have I think, half a decade back.
From what you've said, Arunabh, that the two things that I want to quickly go to, one to Sameer and to Pratiksha. First, to Pratiksha, you made a excellent point about how Friends is always there on in the top 5 or top 10. Is there a reason, Pratiksha, that you guys have this thing called comfort viewing? It's a new category I saw on the homepage of Netflix, as against everything else that you view for an exam. But this one you can do for comfort. Is there a category of a show like a Friends or show like a Seinfeld? They just never go out of fashion because it's just comfort. It's like eating McDonald's. You know exactly how it's going to taste. You don't have to think about it, and you just keep getting that burger again and again. Is that what the category means?
It's something when you want to watch something familiar, you want to watch something what we also call lean back, and also a lot of those roles are personalized, right? So I know, for instance, I'm a big consumer of Friends, Office, Seinfeld, especially when you're having a stressful day. You just want something in the background. You just want something to keep you company. So I definitely do that. So I do see these shows in my on my homepage. And also, let's not forget, these are shows with massive legacy. Whether it's Netflix or whether it's a streaming platform or on television, they do generate a lot of viewing. There's a reason why the Friends reunion was such a massive, celebrated event. So I don't think this can be said for pretty much everything, but these are, pieces of content which have massive history, massive legacy behind it. And, to come back to your question on this comfort viewing, our goal is to give content, film, series to our members for the different moods that they're in, so that when you come to Netflix, you can find something to watch in that moment. And comfort viewing, is obviously one of them, especially during the pandemic when you're kind of stuck at home, doing a lot of, in front of screen work. You just want sometimes to sit back and relax.
Sameer, coming to you, and I don't just see you as a content creator, but also a commentator in your own right. And since the whole world is weighed in on Netflix and, what strategies they should apply or not apply and what they should do, should not do, we're not waiting for this industry to build that legacy in the first place. We're just jumping the gun too soon. It's only about 5 years old. It takes a while for any platform to build a legacy. There's one op-ed I read where Netflix is waiting for its KBC moment, as it were. Will there be such a thing as a KBC moment? Because even Stars spent a lot of time before it really became Star TV. I mean, they were in India for a very long time, and then a pivot happened, as it were. One, do you think this particular industry is going to go the same route, or is it a completely different phenomenon altogether? That's one. Second, I want you to weigh in on the bit about how the people who run this industry, right? I mean, unlike the US, US had its HBO moment back in the late 90s, where they were making differentiated content, quality content right from then, right? And that became the television, a certain kind of television as well. India did not have that HBO moment, and then we've gone straight from TV industry to an OTT industry. Is that a handicap at some level? Just take us through these two particular aspects, Sameer.
So the second one first, we are having our HBO moment now, or have been having it for the last 4 or 5 years. Because, the way TV evolved since 2000s is that it became very daily soap. So we never really created premium drama. In that sense, we never did all that cinematic television. There were a few bits and pieces. We had done Star One, later, 24 came. There were a few shows, but by and large, as an industry, we didn't do that. We were making movies, or we were making long-running soap operas. But the HBO moment has happened. I think in the last 5 years, there's been a lot of content that's been produced, good, bad, and indifferent, but a lot of it. And I think because we are working with international platforms and with, we are looking at what they're doing, it becomes a little easier because there are such reference points. There is, good guidance, good feedback, all sorts of things. So yeah, we'll get there. We are a country with a rich creative sort of industry and a background. We are fast learners. India has forever been inspired by. Now we are just buying rights legitimately, but otherwise we
thank God, huh?
Yeah, I know. Thank God for that.
I think you have started with that.
Otherwise, it's always rip off, inspired by, and all kinds of things. So I remember I was checking on Wikipedia, and I was looking. Chachi 420 is a remake of the Tamil hit whatever, which is inspired for Mrs. Doubtfire. So I'm thinking like, wow, that's quite cool. But so that's one. So I think from an industry point of view, I know everyone is getting better at it in making this kind of content and making it better. And now because it's on a international platforms, what happens is that the urge to make things of a international quality, that things can be consumed elsewhere, is growing. So that will grow. When you come back to this first one about, is it a nascent industry? Yes, it is. This is not an easy business to be in, this whole streaming business. It's one thing about making content. It's another thing about getting subscribers, about getting people to pay for it. India is a very value conscious market. Cable is pathetically cheap here. It's like $3 a month. The equivalent offering anywhere else in the world would be like $20, $30. So, which is why when people talk about cord cutting, India is never going to cut a cord because it's too cheap to cut. It's like, why bother? Just let it be there. I mean, it's difficult. It's difficult to do this. You have so much content out there, so much offering. It's such a huge market. So you're talking about satellite population. Currently, people pay for satellite television, 200 million households. The subscription platforms have got up to about 30, 40 million. So there's a huge headroom there for growth. The broadcasters are in play. They are in any case, woken up to this fact a little late, but have woken up and are now back in the hunt. There's going to be action now at Viacom as well. So I think this is a good time because, there is a lot of excitement. There is a lot of understanding. I think it's funny when everyone jumps in and wants to give Netflix advice. It's like, trying to, give Mike Tyson tips on boxing and, he's having a bad patch. You know what they said, right? That form is temporary, talent is permanent. So I think it's okay. I mean, they're the leaders. I mean, everyone looks at Netflix as the leader, to show how the streaming business is done. And I don't think there's so much about advice or anything. And India being a complicated market, it's always has been, I mean, we are a crazy market. We love cheap stuff. Then we are willing to pay. We keep saying India, everyone wants everything. Everyone in India wants everything free, but it's not true because right from the first day we've paid for cable TV, right? Whatever you might think, you always paid for cable TV. You always pay for everything. We say we are not taxed in this country. You're taxed for everything. You give $10 to a beggar outside your car window. He goes and buys a packet of biscuit. It's got sales tax on it. So, I mean, it's complicated. But I think big opportunity. I think there's big opportunity. I think it's a hungry market. I think the consumer is hungry, and the consumer now with this pandemic has tasted blood in that sense.
Right. I'll take your point about Indians being freeloaders. The fact is also that people have started paying for internet. A lot of people believe that they would not. The moment you give internet for free, in terms of internet content for free, but even while Netflix is perhaps 5% of the market in terms of viewership, it's still about 30% of the revenue because people are still willing to pay for Netflix. So, I mean, I take your point again on how Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, and Z5. I'm not just saying that because you three are here, but that is the HBO moment in India. But the other moment, of course, is the fact that internet has allowed everyone to not just be a content consumer, whether on your mobile phone or on your laptop, wherever it is, but also be a content creator. And I thought this would be a great place to actually speak for the content creator community, the ones that put out, videos, Insta Reels, the one who have following the same kind of following that even perhaps something on an OTT platform could. Likewise with YouTube, likewise with so many other avenues that exist. For all those who are watching this, and I want all of you to weigh in, whether it's a Dharma or it's an Emmay or it's an Applause, or from the platform side, Amazon, Netflix, and Z5. How does one enter this industry? Now I'm meeting people. Earlier back in the day when I was a kid, I would hear these uncle types in my house talking about, have a book to write. They never wrote that book, but they all had this something to say that one day they'll write the book. Now I hear people say, I have a series idea. Everybody has a series to tell, no more a book to write. And which is great thing because it's democratic enough for people to do it. Can one of you or all of you in your own ways take us to the process of someone who's watching this? What is it that they need to do to enter this field? Because it has its own vocabulary, its own grammar, and its own gatekeeping, or does it not? So, Arunabh, I'm going to start with you because that you'll be the most accessible to these guys. You'll meet them wherever you go.
It's almost 10 years now. So Rowdies we released in 2012 as a spoof. February 2012, it's February 2022. So guys, I think if what happens, आपने जो बोला वो सही है, सब लोग idea लेके आते हैं. We really don't entertain ideas unless somebody has actually come with, मतलब we say opposite of tweet, अगर तुम्हारे पास 5,000 words नहीं है किसी भी idea का तो please मत आओ office. So I think there is a lot of excitement around this profession. We are, like you said, we are very, very new. Our content library is smaller than the content library that US had in 1965. Okay. So we are literally, we are getting there. At the same time, there was a guy who used to make small YouTube videos. His YouTube name was Chote Mia. He's a short guy. His height is 3 feet. He is playing the lead in one of our next big show called Bachelor Season 3. And because he was consistent making small videos and he used to write and came with a script and said that, okay, I've written this property in which maybe I can act also. And so I think it's all about the discipline, method into the madness. A lot of people think that रात में कुछ लेट सोएंगे तो कुछ आइडिया आएगा और फिर उसका कुछ हो जाएगा. Unfortunately, guys, this is a job where you actually have to sit on 14 hours in front of a blank screen, try to squeeze something out of a brain. So unlike what you see, this is a very, very tough. And I was very happy when all of you were speaking, and I felt like कि चलो सबको problems हो रहा है production में. You know, it's not that we as a small company we are facing, everybody is facing it. So it's the behind the scenes of this industry really needs to be put out. Everybody is confused. People most of the time think, अच्छा glamour है, show होगा, ये होगा, अभी भी होता है. By the way, there is already the influencer and follower thing that is happening. There is a world in new media where there is a caste system and star system. Acha, this is better. That is so. It's propagating. I just hope that we find more and more people. We need to bring the non-glorious, non-glamorous side of this industry to the fore. That it takes 15 hours, it takes 1.5 years, it takes a lot of prep, it takes so much of effort for something to come out. Otherwise, everybody thinks I have an idea और उससे series बन जाएगा. We have few lawsuits also कि अच्छा ये हमारा idea था कि यार कोटा के ऊपर हम कुछ show बनाएंगे. And then they also send us legal कि okay, you stole our idea. Then I have to remind them, boss, I also studied in Kota. So it's my life. So there are people have a very confused viewpoint. And I'm telling you, we are all in this room limited by the number of people who should have discipline to do it. Talent, I don't value talent as much. I value discipline a lot. Discipline is what we lack. Talent can be compensated. Unfortunately, 10 hours every day, routine wise for 6 days a week, that cannot be compensated. So that's what my feeling is. So if you do that, guys, anybody watching this, I think if you want to write, writing is the easiest job. Write, send us script to all of them. They're all of us are. I think this country has more billionaires than writers. Okay. So I think if anybody wants to write well, I think it's a very lucrative career. Content industry is going to be one of the most. I think this could very well become a good wealth creation revolution like IT industry. We just don't have the method into the madness.
But I'm going to ask you this particular question because it's also such a new industry where you also hear new terms, that we've never heard of before. For our viewers, if you could just make that clearer for them, Pratiksha, Nimisha, you can jump in as well at any point that you'd like to. For instance, there is a showrunner. How is a showrunner different from a producer of a show? There is a Bible. Actually, start with this. What is a Bible of a show? What, according to you, or what, according to the industry, is a Bible of a show that someone should write and thereafter then gets greenlit into a series that becomes the larger screenplay, as it were?
Before I answer that, I just want to say that Arunabh gave a great response to that question. And really, I just wanted to add that, as studio execs, we are constantly keeping an eye on what are the new trends, what's really working, who are the new voices that are emerging, how is the taste sort of changing, what is it that people really want to watch. So we are constantly looking for new ideas. We're really, I call myself and my team story chasers. We will go to any extent to find a great story, but with that comes rigor and discipline. So Arunabh, you said it so well. We are very, very approachable. Every week we get upwards of 50 to 60 pitches, and I promise to you, we read all of them. We take time. Sometimes we get things on WhatsApp, full scripts, and then people are chasing you for a response. It doesn't work like that. If you've spent a couple of months developing it, give us a couple of weeks to at least, read it, review it, and give it due consideration. How do we look at story? Just get us 8 to 10 pages that encapsulate what your idea is. Who is the story about? What is your story? Who's the story about? Who are the key players in your story? Why must I tell this story, as opposed to any other story that's sitting on my table? What is so compelling and differentiated about this story? Tell me about those things. How is this universe going to sort of map out? How is it going to take me inside? How will I start relating with your characters? Just put that out in 10 pages. And after that, whatever you need for development, if you need more writers, if you need recce, if you need any kind of support, we will provide that. But give us that to begin with.
What's the Bible of a show? Pratiksha, Nimisha, you want to take that?
So there are all kinds of Bibles, right? I mean, the purpose of Bible essentially is to show or let the other person visualize how you're really seeing the show, right? I mean, sometimes you can have a great Bible put together with visuals and, simply just pictures in that sense. But essentially what a Bible really needs to do is, adding to what Aparna just spoke about, the character, the setting, the world, is also tell you how the story is progressing. Because many times what happens is people come with this बहुत अच्छी setting है, पर उसमें कहानी क्या हो रही है, नहीं वो तो बनाएंगे ना. So that's not how it works, right? I mean, that has to be the start point. You got to know where you're starting from, whose journey are you following, and where you're reaching. Rest, of course, then can be the writing process. But you will be surprised how these basic things are missing from those ideas that usually people are very passionate about. Not to take away from people's ideas and passion, but I think that much is really needed to kind of evaluate and see if it is something that excites a platform as much as it excites the person who's thought of it.
Right. Pratiksha, when Sacred Games was being made, I think when the second season was being made, we were on the sets of the show, and I asked Vikramaditya Motwane if he had a Bible, and he literally scoffed at me. What is that? Because which is fair, right? It's a changing world, isn't it? I mean, the whole ecosystem is also evolving to a new framework, a new way of working. Is that something that a Netflix and other platforms bring to an ecosystem? Would you agree, Pratiksha? Even for content creators?
Basically, you want to get what's in your head out on paper so that somebody can understand it, right? And whether it's in the form of a Bible, whether it's in the form of a story synopsis, that's up to you. And again, focus on trying to explain your story, whatever the emotions are, put them on paper, instead of saying that this is going to be the best movie or this is going to be the Indian version of XYZ. That doesn't necessarily always help. And I think as studio executives, we're all on the chase for the best story. So it's really in our interest to take the time to be reading what people are sending us, even if it takes a lot of time sometimes. That is our job. That is what we do. And I think it's not just true for studios. I know for platforms, even for studios, for production houses, I'm sure Samir, Arunabh, Apoorva, and Madhu would also kind of echo that, because, as we've been discussing, it's really the time for best stories to be put out there, because if that's not there, then your film, your series is not going to work. So we're all on the hunt for the best stories out there. Just apply that rigor, apply the discipline in ensuring that your story makes sense. If there is an arc to it, there is emotion, the characters are there is relatability, and that doesn't happen easily. Just like all other work, creative work also requires that discipline. It's not about dreaming up an idea at night and putting it out there, like Arunabh mentioned. I'm pretty sure all our emails are out there in the universe. I know because I receive emails where all of us are also collectively marked. So our emails are out there. So we're very, very easily accessible. Our phone numbers are also out there. So I don't think it's that hard to reach us.
And taking off on Pratiksha's point, I must let the viewers know they did not need to do an Indian version of XYZ show, because the Indian version of the XYZ show, the rights of which the rights of all of them belong to Samir Nair already. So he's bought the rights to all those things that you could sit and copy. But coming to you guys, I mean, when you are working in a Bollywood ecosystem, and when there were all these people who would come from small towns and they would live in these particular neighborhoods, would be sitting around in coffee shops, every table there was a movie being made, and that's changed hugely, right? And for you to cater to this new market where you have to create a lot more content, you can't just do 5 movies as you did before. Madhu, Apoorva, do you look out far more on the internet for newer ideas, newer people, look at content creators, whether it's on an Instagram, whether it's on a YouTube? Do you actually actively suss out newer people, and how do they get in touch with you?
Mayank, I think, or for anybody, really, inspiration can come from anywhere, and I don't think that there's really one channel. Of course, we have a team, we have a structure, the development team, there's a creative team here that is constantly curating and looking for ideas. We're developing stuff in-house. There's stuff that's pitched to us. When we started out as a company more than a decade ago, there was a 10-fold. We had one director in-house, and of the 10 titles that we've released in the past during the pandemic, that one director put out only one piece of content, and the rest of it was all other directors who pitched ideas to us, or directors and storytellers who we reached out to. They reached out to us. So really, it can come from any quarter. We are very accessible. We have a dedicated email ID. We are constantly bombarded with emails. Of course, none of those are marked to any of the platforms. But people reach out to us, whether it's Nikhil directly, whether it's Monisha, whether it's myself, whether it's the the development team. So we are constantly receiving ideas. But I think the important thing is, to be able to sift the wheat from the chaff, because yes, there is a lot of stuff out there, and everybody thinks that they're a great storyteller. And not to take away from any of those ideas, but I think that there's a certain grammar that we look for in the content we are creating. We're genre agnostic, but we want to tell human stories, the kind that stay with people. They're human stories, they're uplifting, they're inspirational, all of those things, which I'm sure that everybody chases after those stories. So yeah, really, we're accessible, but I can't say that every piece of material that comes our way, we're jumping at it. I mean, we're careful about the stuff that we invest in and develop. Of course, there are some turkeys as well, because we develop them and then they just don't turn out as you would have expected that they would. But it's a constant process, right? And but yes, there's a lot more that we're doing from where we started out, and we had a film, in a year. We are averaging at a fairly high number, of content that is being churned out on an annual basis, and we're continuing to set our sights on growing, on doing more, and luckily for us, we've partnered with all these lovely ladies and the gentlemen on this platform, and they've been so kind to us and given us the opportunity to tell the stories that we want to.
Yeah, so I think I'll echo a lot of what Madhu said. I think all of us have our own creative teams. We have our own production teams in-house, who are constantly working on new ideas. And it's a mix of really stuff that you kind of internally work on, and you get a pitch from somebody else, which normally comes because, invariably within the system, people know friends who have a pitch and they've heard it, say, listen, this is really good, you should hear it, or directors who've written something, but they want to take it forward. So it pretty much comes from within the system. And of course, we have email IDs, but those are extremely flooded. So I mean, we go through that, but anything that's just an idea, like Arunabh rightly said, you just leave it. You want something more than just 2 lines. You want somebody to put in some meat there, which works for you. So it's really a mix of doing stuff in-house, stuff that gets pitched to us from directors who worked with us, or assistants, or even from outsiders.
Looking at trends, Apoorva, and all of you actually, for 2021, is there a particular trend you see in terms of something that's getting picked up much faster than anything else, whether that be in terms of genre, whether that be a family drama, whether that be a murder mystery, whether that be a thriller, is, like Bollywood right now has like just biopics after biopics, right? I mean, that's the current trend with Hindi films. Is there a similar one when it comes to OTT platforms with a series of films?
So I think basically Aparna and Pratiksha are really the correct ones to answer that. But to the best of our knowledge and having dealt with all of them and all the others, I think it's just everyone's just looking for a great story, So I mean, but I think they are probably in a better position to say what really ticks for them. But I think it's pretty much a really good story that catches you. It doesn't matter what the genre is, because like I said, everyone loves television, everyone loves being entertained, but the definition of love for everybody is different for every age group. So there is enough to watch for everyone.
I just want to say that, of course, we are looking for good stories. We are genre agnostic. But the one thing that I'm really, really focused on at this point of time is young adults. And nobody does it better than Arunabh, actually. But, to really get that cohort, within our fold, get them young and tell stories that reflect their world, their universe, their anxieties, and their aspirations. That's what my focus is on.
So long as the script does not get anyone in this room into trouble, right? And that's the big, also a sort of an elephant in the room, which is a newly acquired censorship that this industry has got now. One, how much of that has led to self-censorship? Two, how much of that is something that bothers you because it's also post facto, something anyone can pick up something from the past as well and they can start having an issue with it. I'll just leave this open to whoever wants to duck it. Please do. What that's done to the creative ecosystem.
So I think basically we've all become very careful now. I mean, there's no lying in that. We're all reading our stuff very, very carefully, because you don't want to, if there is something that, has the ability to definitely antagonize a section of the community or anybody in particular, you want to kind of think about that again. But then beyond that, I think you just do your legal checks and you keep all of that in place, and then you let the content breathe. But but if there's anything specific that is looking volatile, and we discuss it internally, like, listen, this is how this is reading out. Is this kind of seeming very, very volatile? And then you kind of take a informed decision that, okay, let's not get into this space. It's not worth it right now. So I think you have no choice but to work within what is existing now, and you've got to work around that. So I mean, and you kind of prepare yourself if something goes horribly wrong, which in our case always does. So we are learning to live with it now.
As content creators, I think that for us, there are two things that have changed. One is, of course, that there is a higher level of self-governance, because we've seen how the environment is, and it's definitely a lot less tolerant. We've also seen, the change at the platform end, where the S&P and legal teams are far more active, and so that combined sort of sense of vigilance, is leading to us taking a lot more steps to blunt, the messaging in certain cases. And there are certain areas which we're clearly steering clear of, because it's just not worth it. From a content creator's point of view, I think the risk is just tremendous. And understandably, from a platform's point of view, where the investments are fairly sizable. We ourselves have seen how some of our stuff has come under fire, and it's like Apoorva said, it's just not worth it. It's one thing, to you put in 24 months of really hard work, and then just at the click of a button, there's a lynch mob, and suddenly your content is rated as being perhaps one of the poorest performers, when actually that's not the case. So that's how the landscape has changed. For my part, I'm part of the grievance redressal board, which is the council that was set up, in the 3-tier system. And I think that since the council has been put in place, for our part, we've seen a lot of complaints come in. It's pretty okay, and I think that the system so far at least is working. And hopefully, as the industry matures, and once the effects of the pandemic fade, people will get busier with their lives.
This particular forum that you're talking about, the board you're talking about, the grievance redressal board, is this tier 2 of the system. The third one is the government itself, right?
The first tier is the platform themselves, where they receive the complaint. The second one is basically industry, a combine of industry and civil society, which is where I am, and the third one is the interministerial tier. So if a user is not satisfied with their response or the solution that they've received from either tier, it basically, they have the the right to escalate it to the next level.
Right. Samir, there's one thing called censorship, and something is put out. Of course, there is also, much as a lot of people have issues with it, there are now people who don't have issues with it, and they also get vocal and becomes a matter of public debate. And that's perfectly fair, right? The other is self-censorship, where you simply won't even go in that direction. Do you think self-censorship, in fact, in a situation like this is worse because we don't even know what we missed out on?
Just on this whole censorship thing, see, it's always been there. So it's not something so new or unique or anything. Obviously, we feel it a lot more. But I think, honestly, as creators, and we're all creators here, whether studios or platforms or whatever, is that it is a job of a creator to both reflect society and to hold a mirror to society. You're supposed to do both. You're supposed to tell the stories they're telling you not to tell. You're supposed to find ways to do those things. You're supposed to, deal with uncomfortable subjects. You're supposed to do these things, that all great art progresses on that basis. And there will obviously be, from at each phase, there will be different tastes, different evolution, different establishment, all of that will happen. So I think the bigger danger than censorship is self-censorship, because, then you're almost anticipating what could become a problem, which may not be true. The other thing, of course, is that, if everything is just too bland and too vanilla and too safe, then the outcome of that is that it doesn't work, because, at the end of the day, audiences are still looking for excitement and edginess, and, they're looking for that kind of, they're looking for other things. And when that happens, then everyone says, oh, this content isn't working because it's, probably too vanilla. And then something new happens and someone breaks new ground and moves forward. So it's an evolutionary process. Currently, because of the current situation, we recently released a show on Voot Select. It took us about 1.5 years to get it out there. It's called Humble Politician Nagraj, which is about this corrupt politician in Karnataka. And Tanish Seth plays the titular role. It's an outrageous piece of content. You've got to see it. I mean, it's in Kannada, Hindi, and he's done a movie before called Humble Politician Nagraj, which is on Amazon. And we did the series, as in the 10-part series, and it's completely outrageous. It's inappropriate, and how he's like Borat for India, like completely stupid, and everyone's in it, all politicians, all sorts of things are going on. And it's hard to find fault with it, in the sense that, you may want to get angry, but we've managed to walk that fine line of, avoiding any, major trouble. But the thing is, I think it's really our responsibility to keep trying to do that. So, with each time a kind of a barrier or a block comes up, it is our duty to try and find a way around it, above it, below it, or just through it. I think we should do that.
So that's one show that you mentioned, Humble Politician Nagraj, from 2021. But ideally, and this is a question I'm going to ask all of you, and that's the end of our conversation. Ideally, something not produced by you, something that you watched in 2021 that you deeply loved, either a show or a film from anywhere in the world that you personally recommend that people should watch from 2021. I'll start with you, Samir.
I'm going to pick a personal taste, because, I liked many shows in 2021, but there was this one special that came on Netflix, which was Seinfeld at 60. So Jerry Seinfeld did a stand-up special, about 1.5 hours. He is now an older man. He still has a gripe with everything around him, much as he did when he was a younger man. And that special, I was really looking forward to it, and I saw it, and, I was really concerned because I'm a big fan, and I was, worried about being let down, but I was quite pleased. I quite liked that.
Well, I personally enjoyed, recently there was a show called Dope Sick, which came out on Hotstar, and it was really, really good. And I finished watching it, and then I was watching everything on the Sacklers and reading everything about the Sacklers. And so it was really interesting. And I really did enjoy Family Man too. some of the homegrown stuff. So these two really, really good.
So I really enjoyed this German show called Dark, which has 3 seasons now, which is completely unreal and surreal, and it's just it's magical. I mean, the way they've thought through it and the way they've kind of gone back and forth. I've never seen something like that, so I really enjoyed that, and I also enjoyed the Mayor of Easttown recently on HBO, which was just an incredible performance by Kate Winslet.
So it would be Mayor of Easttown and Aspirants.
Okay, so I think Mumbai Diaries I've seen. And I still have to finish the entire season, but I have to watch that. Kate is a film on Netflix. Loved it. It's an action film of a girl in Tokyo, how she avenges. In fact, someday want to make something like that. Dark is another favorite on Netflix. Breakpoint I already told. Shersa, amazing. Loved it. I think it is the movie on OTT which has broken out. I think as a phenomena, movies really, really kicking it out of the park. Last year only started. Of course, Scam तो मैं 5-6 बार देख चुका हूँ, तो अभी समीर सर को मैं कितनी बार बताऊँ, मतलब मैं 10 बार देख चुका हूँ, और Humble Nagraj is again, I know, so I've seen it before also. So yeah, it is a genre. It's a beginning of a new genre.
Arunabh was just basically being humble politician. Nagraj looked at everyone, all the windows, and he chose one thing to appreciate them for.
मैं तो देखता रहता हूँ, मैं तो बहुत ज़्यादा देखता हूँ, इसीलिए मतलब.
But please, can I say one that's on my platform, but I've had nothing to do with it. It's The Great Indian Kitchen. I can't tell you how blown I was with that film. And then, of course, there is Mayor of Easttown.
So again, I didn't have anything to do with it, but it's on Netflix. Squid Game definitely took me by surprise when it launched. And if I have to pick another one, I would actually say The Morning Show season 2. I know it hasn't gotten as much love, but I personally really enjoyed it.
Were you personally surprised, as a person who works with Netflix, the kind of response Squid Game got across the world?
Yes.
I mean,
yes, I think, and the folks who also worked on it, of course, they knew it would be a big show in Korea, but the breakout organic success it had globally, that definitely took everyone by surprise. And I think it was also around the time when we were all still kind of recovering from the second wave globally. And, we all like to talk about trends. And the one trend everybody was talking about was that now everybody just wants happy content. And that show is anything but happy. It's deeply tragic. But it's such a great story that it just did wonders.
Pratiksha, Aparna, Arunabh, Nimisha, Apoorva, Madhu, Samir, I really hope that we have amazing surprises like Squid Game lined up for 2022 from all of you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you.
Radio City and Midday present the Hitlist OTT Awards.
Subscribe to Midday India. Get direct notifications on all our videos by clicking on the bell icon.